offenses, the circumstances of the offense are allegedly egregious.
New trouble for a fire lieutenant and his wife accused of abusing a foster child. There are new charges and more allegations involving their own children. But one of their attorneys says the facts are on the parents' side. I'll explain. I'm Anjanette Levy, and this is Crime Fix. From the outside looking in, Joel and Jennifer Conert look like the perfect parents in a large family. Joel was a fire lieutenant.
On the surface, the Conert family of Broward County, Florida looked like the definition of wholesome. Joel Conert worked as a fire lieutenant, the kind of man neighbors trusted without a second thought, someone who ran into burning buildings for a living. His wife, Jennifer, stayed home to raise their kids. 5 biological children, plus a foster daughter the couple had taken in as a 2-month-old infant and raised for more than a decade. Online, their family photos told a story of faith, structure, and a house full of love. Their neighborhood in Coral Springs was solidly middle class.
Joel was a fire lieutenant at the Broward Sheriff's Fire Rescue. Jennifer was a stay-at-home mom. The couple had 5 biological children, and they were also fostering a child, a girl, from the time she was a baby until she was 12 years old. On Facebook, the Conerts looked picture perfect, but the state attorney in Broward County says there was something awful going on behind the photos and behind closed doors. The claim? The 12-year-old girl the Conerts had fostered since she was a baby was being singled out in the home and mistreated. The girl, according to the prosecutor, was being
the kind of place where people assume they know who lives next door. But according to Broward County prosecutors, everything about that image was hiding something far darker, and the details that have come out since are difficult to hear, even by true crime standards. The case became public in February of 2026, when
was being tortured. A detective wrote in a probable cause affidavit, on February 11th, 2026, a Department of Children and Families investigator responded to the resource officer regarding allegations that blank was locked in her bedroom at night due to claims that she wandered the house and took items from the family members. The intake further indicated that during this period, the child did not have access to a bathroom, resulting in her urinating on the floor and being forced to clean it the following morning. The intake also noted that the child was required to write Bible verses as a form of punishment. So this is just the beginning of what the state attorney says was torture. Investigators with Children's Services,
a Department of Children and Families investigator, responded to concerns raised through the foster child school. The girl, now 12 years old, had recently transitioned from being homeschooled to attending public school for the first time in her life, and it was around that shift, according to investigators, that she finally told someone what was happening at home, after years of a life that had reportedly kept her largely isolated from anyone outside the household who might have noticed something was wrong. Investigators say the family had, at some point, explained away locking the girl in her bedroom at night as discipline for her allegedly wandering the house and taking items belonging to other family members. On paper, that might have sounded almost reasonable. What investigators say they actually found went far beyond a lock on a door. According to the probable cause affidavit, the girl told investigators that for roughly 2 to 3 years, she was regularly confined to her bedroom overnight, and at times during the day as well, with no access to a bathroom while locked inside. She said she would urinate and at times defecate on herself during these hours of confinement, and that every morning, she was the one required to clean it up.
Children's Services interviewed the girl twice over the span of 2 days. They said things the girl told them raised serious concerns. The investigator wrote, during these interviews, the child disclosed that for approximately 2 to 3 years, she had been locked in her bedroom overnight and at times during the day. She stated that while confined overnight, she urinates on herself and at times defecates on herself due to lack of access to a bathroom. The child reported that in the morning she is required to bathe outside in the backyard while wearing a bathing suit despite inadequate weather conditions.
Then go outside to bathe in the backyard wearing nothing but a bathing suit, no matter the weather. Investigators say she was also made to copy out Bible verses and Proverbs by hand as a form of punishment, kept on a more restricted diet than her siblings, and cut off from almost every normal part of family life. No shared meals, no playing with her brothers and sisters, hours upon hours spent completely alone. One detail that surfaced during the investigation was that a sound machine had even been placed in her room.
Basis. And I have the information here, and some of the allegations for the aggravated child abuse included willful torture, malicious punishment, unlawful caging, restricted diet. She wasn't allowed to eat certain foods as her siblings, depriving access not only to the bathroom but to other parts of the house. But what's even more egregious is that the parents would play this sound noise in her room so she would not have the access to hear what's going on in the outside. So this is beyond extreme torture, which is why she was charged with aggravated child abuse, first-degree felony, and they're looking at upwards of 30 years Florida State Prison. And you have neglect of a child, and that's a third
Seemingly so she couldn't hear what the rest of the household sounded like while she was shut away. Detectives didn't rely on her account alone. They separately interviewed each of the Conert's biological children, and according to the affidavit, every one of them backed it up. The siblings confirmed their sister was locked in her room overnight, that she urinated and defecated on herself as a result, and that she was made to bathe and wash her own clothes outside. Just as tellingly, investigators say each sibling was clear that they themselves were never punished that way.
Investigators said they also spoke with the biological children of the Conerts. A detective wrote, "I interviewed all of the children residing in the home who are the biological children of Jennifer and Joel. These children confirmed that the child is locked in her room overnight, urinates and defecates on herself, and is required to bathe outside and wash her clothing. All siblings advised that they are not subjected to that type of punishment. They reported that the child spent a majority of her time isolated in her room, writing proverbs, and is rarely allowed to participate in normal family activities such as eating meals and playing with siblings." So investigators say the Conerts'
This was something reserved only for their foster sister. They told detectives she spent most of her time isolated in her room, copying out scripture, and was rarely included in anything resembling ordinary family activity. When detectives sat down with Jennifer Conert directly,
forced to write proverbs, the investigators then turned their attention to the Conerts. The affidavit states Jennifer agreed to speak with me and was advised of the DCF allegations. Jennifer admitted to locking the child in her room overnight and acknowledged that the child has been urinating and defecating on herself for approximately 2 to 3 years. Jennifer confirmed that the child is required to write proverbs as punishment and that she is required to bathe and wash her clothing outside with limited access to indoor facilities. Jennifer acknowledged that these practices were unusual. Jennifer also stated that the victim would not thrive in her care and is willing to turn her back over to the state of Florida, although Jennifer and Joel have been her caretaker since she was 2 months old.
She reportedly didn't deny the core of what was being described. According to the affidavit, she admitted to locking the child in her room overnight, acknowledged that the girl had been urinating and defecating on herself for roughly 2 to 3 years as a result, and confirmed both the handwritten religious punishment and the arrangement requiring the child to bathe and wash clothing outdoors. She allegedly described the practices as unusual in her own words, and told investigators the child would not thrive in her care, saying she was willing to hand the girl back over to the state of Florida, despite having been her only caregiver since the girl was 2 months old. Joel Conert, for his part, reportedly acknowledged that the child's bedroom door and window
months old. Then investigators said they went and spoke with Joel Conert. The detective wrote in the affidavit during the interview, Joel acknowledged that there were safety concerns associated with the victim's bedroom door and window being secured in a manner that restricted her ability to exit. This practice is particularly concerning, and given Joel's professional background, where he would reasonably be expected to recognize the inherent safety risk is associated with restricting a child's ability to exit a room during an emergency. All of this information from the children and Joel and Jennifer formed the basis for the initial aggravated child abuse charge. But the investigation and review by prosecutors continued. And Jennifer and Joel, they were back in court this week, and they now face additional charges of child neglect and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. The delinquency of a minor charge states that a child did observe and or was encouraged to participate in the physical, mental, and/or emotional abuse of a sibling. So the Conerts are now accused of encouraging their own children to take part in the abuse of their foster sibling.
Multiple counts of contributing to the delinquency of a minor, charges that accuse the couple of allowing, or even encouraging, their own children to witness and take part in the mistreatment of their foster sister. Prosecutors aren't just alleging the Conerts abused one child. They're alleging the abuse became something the whole household was pulled into.
This awful, awful abuse.
Yeah, these allegations are absolutely horrible. And I do not believe that that is the only time frame that they decided to be monsters. I believe that this has been ongoing. Unfortunately, in this case, we don't have sufficient evidence, and maybe that's why the prosecution decided to just stick with that time frame for purposes of trying this case. But when you hear these allegations of this foster child not only being abused, but her other siblings being subjected to viewing this abuse or participating, it gets even worse. And then to find out that these parents claim to be Christians and they're doing this in the name of religion,
Be allowed to remain
just
free
blows us
on
out of the
bond.
water.
I want to call the court's attention to this, because what I'm requesting is, my client has no prior record. She has two children at home, two adult children that are waiting for her. There is a pending case with the children, which is now, apparently there's an agreement that's going to be settled.
This is a dependency
Correct.
court.
Exactly.
Okay?
And I want to call attention to the court that with no prior record, my client at the magistrate hearing, the public defender at that time asked for a $15,000 bond on Broward County. The state of Florida asked for a $50,000 bond. The magistrate on their own required $100,000.
Waiting for her at home, and that a separate dependency case involving the children was already moving through the courts under a working agreement. Her attorney also pushed back on the narrative that the parents were isolating the foster child from her siblings, arguing instead that the girl had allegedly threatened to stab one or more of the other children.
First attorney offered a possible defense claiming the foster child may have been violent.
I would suggest to the court that my client could be placed on pretrial release on the other counts. I don't believe there is a necessity for an ankle monitor. They haven't been on an ankle monitor to this point, and they've been perfectly law-abiding and following all the rules as defined. And I would also just to refute something the prosecutor said, the reason that the biological children don't want to have contact with the alleged victim in this case is because they were threatened to be stabbed by them. So there's actually a valid factual reason why that is, not the inference the state is making that somehow the parents are somehow having influence on their children not to have contact with the child. That's just not
Danger to the defendant's releases to opposes the community. This particular factor, this court does have a concern as to the potential influence that the parents can have on the biological children vis-a-vis their relationship with their adopted sibling. However, in order to address those particular concerns, whether I set a bond or pretrial services in this matter, it is going to be the purpose of setting the restrictions is going to ensure that there is compliance with the dependency proceedings. That is the court's orders that are in effect that will impact the visitations as well as any interaction between the parents as well as the biological children and the adopted child. As to the other factors, this is not a controlled substance issue, and intimidation to the victim falls on my previous analysis. Based on the totality of the circumstances, count 1 remains at $100,000. Counts 2, 3, 6, pretrial services, level 2 with HEPS monitor, and special conditions, stay away from the victim, no victim contact, all original conditions of bond.
Strict no-contact conditions on the remaining counts. Neither parent was taken into custody that day.
Conditions of bond remain in effect. That is the court's order for counts 3 to 6. Ma'am, would you kindly prepare that order? Ma'am, please do not leave the courtroom, okay? You are not being taken into custody at this time. However, you will be served by one of the deputies with the capias. All right? Thank you very much.
Then it was Joel Conert's turn to face the judge.
Special condition, no victim contact, stay away order. The defendant may not have any contact with the victims either in person, through third parties, or through social media. All original conditions are remain in effect. Mr. Conert, please do not leave the courtroom. You are not being taken into custody at this time. However, you will be served by a deputy with the case. All right, thank you very much, sir.